Welcome, dear viewers. Today, we invite you to embark on a remarkable journey, a truly unique story about cats, filled with drama, tragedy, and, ultimately, a happy ending that will leave you inspired. This is not just another tale of fuzzy companions lounging in the sun. Instead, brace yourselves for an odyssey of daring escapes, heartbreaking losses, and the unyielding power of hope. Sit back, relax, and let your imagination run free as we delve into the gripping world of cat adventures unlike any you have seen before. In a quiet coastal village nestled along a rocky shoreline, there once lived a small community of cats who roamed the docks, the alleyways, and the creaking piers where fishing boats swayed in the tide. For most of the year, this humble place remained calm and uneventful, with the gentle hush of waves lapping against wooden posts. But one fateful evening in the early days of spring, under the pale glow of a crescent moon, everything changed. The moonlight shimmered upon weathered rooftops and danced along the salt-stained hulls of old boats. Shadows drifted in the narrow streets, and if one listened closely, a soft, distant rumbling could be heard, the harbinger of a terrible storm rolling in from the open sea. Beneath that silver moon, a young cat named Aurora stood at the edge of the pier, her amber eyes fixed on the endless water. She was a slender creature, her fur a blend of ash gray and pale cream, and she possessed a quiet wisdom that belied her youthful appearance. On that particular night, Aurora sensed something in the wind, something that made her heart tremble with both anticipation and dread. It felt as if the currents carried warnings of impending chaos, an omen that life would soon be turned upside down. She flicked her tail anxiously and gazed up at the sky, where the clouds churned in a chaotic swirl. Nearby, her brother Storm, a burly, charcoal-furred tomcat, paced the pier restlessly, his mind equally uneasy about the shifting weather. Storm had always been fiercely protective of his sister. Having lost their mother to a sudden illness only a few months earlier, they had learned to rely solely on each other's presence. Her gentle spirit tempered his hot-headed impulses, and his strength shielded her from danger in turn. Together, they formed an unbreakable bond that guided them through every hardship and triumph. Little did they know that this night was the start of an epic cat adventure, one that would thrust them into the heart of drama and tragedy, testing their courage, their loyalty, and their capacity for hope. During the final hours of that haunting night, the winds intensified. Fierce gusts raked the village, howling against the window panes and rattling loose shutters. Aurora and Storm, along with other local cats, found refuge under a toppled fishing boat wedged against the rocky shoreline. The air grew thick with electricity, and the horizon disappeared behind a curtain of rain. Then, as thunder cracked and lightning cleaved the dark sky, the storm unleashed its full fury. Waves slammed onto the docks, scattering debris and flooding the narrow streets. The once calm harbor erupted into chaos as the wind tugged violently at moored boats, snapping ropes like twine. Most of the cat colony had scurried to higher ground, sheltering in attics and abandoned warehouses. But some, including Aurora, Storm, and a few of their friends, Ebony, Crispin, and Willow, found themselves trapped along the pier, cornered by rising tides. Ebony was a sleek, black-furred cat, her eyes a bright emerald, and her demeanor both regal and cautious. Crispin, a lanky flame-colored tom with keen intelligence, often acted as the group strategist. Willow, pale and delicate, was known for her swift paws and a gentle heart that overflowed with compassion. Together, these 5 cats had formed a small circle of trust, supporting each other ever since they were kittens exploring the labyrinthine alleys of the village. As the storm raged, water surged higher, threatening to sweep the toppled fishing boat into the raging sea. Aurora felt her heart pound as lightning illuminated Crispin's frightened face. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape route. Ebony crouched low, her tail coiled around Willow to keep her from panicking. Storm pressed himself against Aurora's side, urging her to stay calm, to hold on until the storm subsided. But the storm did not subside. For hours, and it felt like a lifetime, the wind and rain battered the coastline, forcing the young cats to cling to the splintered remains of the boat. Finally, just before dawn, the tempest began to ebb. By the time the sun peeked over the horizon, turning the sky into a watercolor swirl of pink and gold, the village lay in ruins. Roofs had collapsed, boats were smashed or missing, and the streets were littered with shattered wood and broken nets. Shaken but grateful to have survived, Aurora, Storm, Ebony, Crispin, and Willow ventured out from their hiding place. Exhaustion weighed heavily on them, yet they understood that the real test of their survival had only just begun. Their homes were destroyed, their food supplies ruined, and many of their fellow cats were missing. As the days stretched on after the storm, the village cats worked tirelessly to rebuild their lives. But it seemed that ill fortune had settled over the coastline. Fish were scarce, and the people who once offered scraps of food were either displaced or too burdened with their own losses to spare anything. Tension simmered among the cats, with disputes flaring over territory and limited supplies. In an effort to keep their group safe, Aurora and Storm decided it was time to leave the village behind. The area was no longer the haven it had once been. They agreed to journey inland, to search for a more stable home, perhaps near the rolling farmlands said to be bountiful with mice and shelter. It was a bold plan, but the time for caution had passed. One early morning, they set out on their cat adventure, determined to find a better future. Ebony, Crispin, and Willow followed close behind, their spirits weighed down by the memories of the storm but lifted by the hope of discovering a safe haven. Through winding roads strewn with debris, the five companions moved carefully, guided by Crispin's keen sense of direction and Ebony's level-headed wisdom. It was not an easy journey. The roads were muddy and slick, the farmland further inland had also suffered from heavy rains, and resources everywhere were strained. At certain points, they encountered stray dogs, equally desperate for food, prowling in abandoned barns. More than once, they had to scatter when territorial farm cats challenged them for stepping over invisible borders. Each confrontation left them more exhausted, and tension within their own group began to rise. Willow, the most timid among them, grew increasingly anxious. She often hesitated at the edge of a new field or grove of trees, her ears pinned back, tail quivering. Ebony tried to reassure her with comforting purrs, but even Ebony's confidence was starting to wane. The nights were cold, the days treacherous, and their progress painfully slow. Aurora, who had always relied on her inner serenity, struggled to maintain hope. She began to recall the losses she had endured, her mother's passing, the devastation wrought by the storm, the possibility that more tragedy could still lie ahead. Storm, sensing his sister's turmoil, tried to remain her pillar of strength. He put on a brave face, leading the way, even when he was racked with doubts himself. The first major misfortune struck when Crispin fell into an old well. They had stumbled upon the abandoned structure as they traversed an overgrown orchard, its fruit trees bent and broken by the storm. The well had no warning sign, just a crumbling stone ring hidden amid tall grass. In one unlucky misstep, Crispin tumbled headlong into the darkness below. Panic seized the group. Willow cried out, pawing frantically at the edge. Ebony peered over the side, calling Crispin's name. Storm, ears flattened, raced around to find a rope or vine that might be used for rescue. Meanwhile, Aurora forced herself to remain calm, carefully creeping to the well's rim and listening for any sign of movement below. After a few agonizing moments, Crispin's weak mew echoed upward. He was alive but injured. With desperate teamwork, Storm and Ebony managed to drag a long, sturdy branch toward the well, and Aurora lowered it inside. Crispin, battered and frightened, managed to cling to the branch with his claws. Willow and Ebony pulled with all their might, while Storm, with every ounce of his formidable strength, gripped the makeshift rescue line. It was a grueling effort, but at last Crispin emerged from the dark pit, covered in mud and trembling from head to tail. Relief washed over them all, but Crispin's paw was sprained badly. He limped with every step, and his overall condition grew worse in the days that followed. The bone-chilling nights did not allow his injuries to mend properly, and the limited food supply weakened his immune system. As the group pressed on, it became evident that Crispin was slowing them down. Guilt gnawed at him, but they reassured him of their unwavering commitment. Days turned into weeks, spelled out as 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and so on, though time was difficult to measure in their weary minds. The trees turned from lush green to the first hints of autumn, the nights lengthened, and a subtle chill crept into the air. The 5 traveling cats grew gaunt, their bones showing beneath fur dulled by fatigue. Yet they refused to give up. They were spurred on by a vision of a new home where they could heal and thrive. At last, on a golden afternoon, they arrived at the edge of a wide river. Beyond it stretched fertile farmland, dotted with farmhouses that appeared intact. Geese honked overhead, and the sound of chickens clucking in the distance suggested that these farms might still offer a reliable source of food for a small colony of cats. Crispin, weary from limping, gazed across the shimmering water. "If only we can get across," he murmured. Ebony flicked her tail thoughtfully. "We should look for a place to ford the river or find a bridge," she said. So they followed the riverbank, searching for a crossing point. Soon, they found the remnants of a wooden bridge, partially destroyed by flooding. Storm stepped tentatively onto the first beam. It wobbled but held firm enough to carry his weight. One by one, the cats ventured onto the makeshift walkway. The river below swirled with strong currents, and the broken planks made the crossing perilous. About halfway across, a particularly violent swirl of water dislodged a large piece of debris upriver, sending it crashing into the remaining timbers. The bridge shuddered and began to collapse. Without warning, the beam beneath Willow's paws gave way. She let out a terrified yowl as she plunged toward the rushing river. Lightning fast, Aurora lunged forward, hooking Willow's scruff with her claws. Storm grabbed Aurora by the hind legs, anchoring them both. For several heart-stopping seconds, Willow dangled over the water, her eyes wide with fear. With tremendous effort, Storm heaved Aurora backward, and Aurora in turn dragged Willow to safety. But the ordeal was not over. As more support beams gave way, Crispin found himself separated from the others. Ebony, who had already scrambled to the far bank, shouted for him to jump. Crispin's injured paw made leaping difficult, but with the entire structure groaning ominously, he had little choice. Summoning his courage, Crispin leaped from one precarious plank to another, landing in Ebony's outstretched paws just as the last of the bridge collapsed into the raging water. Miraculously, all 5 cats stood panting on the far bank, safe though shaken. Adrenaline surged through their veins, and for a fleeting moment, they shared a feeling of profound relief, an electric surge of triumph at cheating death once again. Yet in the wake of that relief, an even deeper exhaustion settled over them. They could not endure much more danger or tragedy. On the other side of the river, the farmland offered signs of hope. Fences cast long shadows across neatly plowed rows, and a few farm buildings stood tall against the evening sky. One farm, larger than the rest, caught their attention. It had a barn with a roof intact, and even from a distance, Aurora's keen nose caught the scent of hay and grain. Where there was grain, there could be mice and other small creatures, a potential feast for hungry cats. They approached cautiously under the cloak of twilight, hearts pounding with both anticipation and fear. What if the resident farm cats were hostile? What if dogs patrolled the property? Any number of threats could lurk in the darkness. Creeping along a hedgerow, they surveyed the barn from a safe distance. A flicker of movement drew their gaze to an open window. A pair of glowing eyes peered back at them. Storm tensed, ready to defend his companions. Then, a soft mew drifted through the window. A tabby cat's face appeared, a friendly-looking creature with round cheeks and curious eyes. She made no move to attack, rather, she seemed intrigued by the visitors. After a moment of mutual observation, the tabby disappeared. Moments later, the barn door creaked open from within, revealing a path lit by a lantern's glow. Cautiously, the 5 travelers entered, fur bristling, prepared for confrontation. Inside the barn, they found not an enemy but a small group of resident cats, about 4 or 5 in number, led by the tabby who had beckoned them in. These barn cats seemed sympathetic. Though wary, they offered the newcomers a chance to rest in the warm hay loft, provided they did not steal from the human occupants or cause trouble. Aurora could hardly believe their luck. She purred her gratitude, and soon the 5 friends settled into a corner of the loft. For the first time in many weeks, they enjoyed a safe, sheltered sleep. In the morning, the barn cats showed them where to hunt mice along the grain sacks, and how to avoid the large farm dog that patrolled the yard. This new environment seemed like a gift from the heavens, perhaps even the home they had been seeking. Yet tragedy was not finished with them. Crispin's injuries, aggravated by the stress of travel, took a turn for the worse. A stubborn infection set in, draining his energy. Each day, he grew weaker, his once bright eyes dimming. Despite Willow's gentle grooming and Ebony's tireless vigilance, Crispin's fever climbed. The barn cats offered what advice they could, herbs found around the farm, places to rest, but Crispin's condition did not improve. Desperate for a remedy, Aurora recalled an old rumor whispered among the dockside cats back in the coastal village. A wise cat known as Sage, who lived in the ancient oak forest beyond the farmland, possessed knowledge of healing. Many dismissed Sage as a myth, but with Crispin's life hanging in the balance, Aurora clung to this hope. When Ebony insisted that Crispin could not travel any farther, Aurora volunteered to go alone to find Sage, if such a cat truly existed. Storm insisted on accompanying her, refusing to let his sister journey into the unknown by herself. Time was of the essence, as Crispin's fever had already escalated beyond anything they had encountered before. Willow stayed behind to comfort Crispin, while Ebony elected to remain at his side, fiercely determined to save him. So it was that Aurora and Storm ventured deeper inland, leaving the relative safety of the barn at dawn. The ancient oak forest lay several miles away, miles that felt like an eternity as they navigated fields, crossed narrow creeks, and ventured into increasingly dense woodlands. The further they went, the more the farmland dissolved into a realm of tall oaks and thick underbrush. In that silent cathedral of towering trees, the sunlight filtered through leaves that had already begun to turn amber and gold, casting a warm glow on the forest floor. The air smelled of damp earth and moss, and every rustle of the wind in the branches sounded like a whisper in a forgotten language. Aurora's intuition told her they were close. The forest was ancient, filled with hidden secrets that might include this mysterious sage. Sure enough, they eventually came to a clearing bathed in soft morning light. In its center stood an enormous oak tree, its trunk gnarled with age. At its base, partially concealed by twisted roots, was a hollow space, just large enough for a cat to pass through. Storm gestured for Aurora to wait while he crept forward, sniffing at the entrance. The cool scent of herbs wafted out, and a faint glow flickered inside, as if from luminescent mushrooms or bioluminescent insects. Suddenly, a voice, low and resonant, drifted from within, "I've been expecting you." Aurora and Storm exchanged startled glances. Cautiously, they stepped into the hollow. Inside, they discovered a cavernous chamber formed by the tree's inner hollows and the natural limestone beneath it. A withered, silver-furred cat lay curled on a bed of dried leaves, her eyes cloudy but focused. Tangles of roots framed her like the spokes of a living tapestry, and around her were small piles of dried plants and flowers. "You are seeking healing," the old cat said softly, her voice tinged with gentle authority. Aurora felt an eerie chill dance along her spine. "Yes," she breathed, her eyes wide. "Our friend Crispin is gravely ill. We were told someone here might know how to help." The old cat, Sage, stood slowly, joints creaking. She moved toward a cache of dried herbs, sniffing carefully before nudging a particular bundle toward Aurora. "Steep this plant in water, then have him drink the infusion," she instructed. "It will help fight the fever and ease his pain. But be warned, no herb can save a cat who has lost the will to live. Your friend must hold on to hope." Aurora and Storm thanked Sage profusely. The ancient cat's milky gaze seemed to pierce right through them, as if she could see not just their faces but their souls. "Go," she whispered. "Time is short." Gripping the bundle of herbs in their jaws, Aurora and Storm hurried back through the forest. They retraced their steps across fields and streams, hearts pounding with renewed urgency. By the time they reached the barn, the sky had darkened with the smoky hues of late evening. Ebony spotted them from the loft window and rushed to meet them at the door. Inside, Crispin lay unmoving, breathing shallow and irregular, his fur wet with sweat. Willow hovered near, eyes brimming with tears, while the barn cats looked on, sharing a somber silence that hung in the musty air. Without hesitation, Aurora prepared a small bowl of water, dropped in the herbs, and gently coaxed Crispin to drink the concoction. For hours, they sat vigil. Crispin's breathing remained ragged, and occasionally he let out a soft whimper. Ebony curled around him, softly purring in his ear, as if reminding him he was not alone. Storm paced, tension radiating from every muscle. Aurora prayed silently to any higher power that might be listening. Willow's delicate paws never left Crispin's side, as she licked his forehead in an effort to soothe him. Then, just past midnight, Crispin's breathing began to steady. The harsh rasp that had rattled his lungs eased into a gentler rhythm. By dawn, he slipped into a more restful sleep. The fever broke, leaving him pale and weak but visibly improved. Tears of relief glistened in Willow's eyes, and Ebony finally allowed herself to exhale. Aurora dropped her head against Storm's shoulder, overwhelmed by the raw power of hope that had kept them going. In the days that followed, Crispin's condition improved steadily. Though he remained frail, he could walk again without extreme pain. Each sunrise saw him gain a bit more strength. Under the watchful eyes of the barn cats, the travelers resumed a semblance of normal life. They hunted mice around the silo, found warm corners to sleep, and napped in the late autumn sun that streamed through gaps in the barn's walls. Yet the hardships they had endured left deep emotional scars. Tension still simmered beneath the surface. Storm struggled with nightmares about losing Aurora. Aurora found herself reliving the storm's devastation each time the wind picked up. Ebony often worried that Crispin's illness might return, or that another disaster could be lurking around the corner. Willow, so sensitive to the emotional undercurrents of her friends, felt torn between relief and an unshakable sense of dread. One overcast afternoon, a quarrel erupted between Crispin and Storm. Crispin's pride had been bruised by his long period of helplessness, and Storm's protective nature sometimes came across as patronizing. Ebony tried to mediate, but the heated words spilled out uncontrollably. It was an ugly scene, and for the first time, Aurora worried that the unity of their group might be unraveling. Crispin, cheeks burning with shame, stormed out of the barn. He limped into the field behind the farmhouse, ignoring Willow's plaintive calls for him to return. Storm muttered curses under his breath, refusing to apologize for what he saw as justifiable frustration. For a moment, it seemed as if an invisible wall had been erected between them all, blocking out the compassion that once held them together. In that grim atmosphere, Ebony took Aurora aside. "We can't let this break us," she whispered. "We've been through so much, drama, near-death experiences, and unbelievable tragedy. But we must remember our bond. Without each other, we have nothing." Aurora looked into her friend's earnest eyes and knew Ebony was right. Despite the fear, the hunger, and the heartbreak that had weighed upon them for so long, they were still here, alive, together, and close to forging a new home. "I'll talk to Crispin," Aurora promised softly. "Storm means well, but he doesn't always choose his words carefully. Crispin, for his part, has been through a lot. He needs understanding, not anger." Late that evening, Aurora found Crispin sitting in the shadow of a large oak tree near the farmhouse. The sky was bruised with purples and grays, and a scattering of stars began to twinkle overhead. He stared at the horizon, lost in thought. She quietly approached, her tail held low in a gesture of peace. "I'm sorry," Crispin murmured before she even spoke. "I know Storm was just trying to help me, but sometimes I feel so useless. I hate being the one who needs rescuing." Aurora gently nudged his shoulder. "You're not useless, Crispin. We needed your intelligence to find our path. We needed your bravery when the bridge collapsed. You matter more than you know." He glanced up, the corners of his mouth twitching in a sad smile. "I just feel like fate has it out for me. Falling into that well, getting sick, causing all of you so much worry. Maybe Storm is right, maybe I'm just a liability." Aurora shook her head firmly. "You are our friend. Family, even. We made it this far because of each other. Remember the day of the storm? If we hadn't acted as a team, none of us would have survived that night. Never doubt your worth." Crispin closed his eyes, taking in Aurora's words as though they were a balm for his wounded pride. With a heavy sigh, he rose, leaning slightly on his healthier paw. "Let's head back," he said softly. "I owe Storm an apology. We can't afford any more division." They walked back to the barn under the canopy of dusk, side by side, their shadows long against the tall grass. The farmyard crickets serenaded them, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of hay and ripening pumpkins. By the time they arrived, Storm was standing at the barn door, his expression uncertain. Crispin made the first move, bowing his head in a humble gesture. "I shouldn't have lashed out," he admitted. "You've done nothing but look after us all." Storm's stern features softened. "I'm sorry, too," he replied gruffly. "Sometimes I forget how hard it can be to feel helpless. I was just afraid we'd lose you." In that moment, the tension that had threatened to tear them apart dissipated, replaced by relief and mutual respect. Ebony and Willow, who had been quietly observing from the hayloft, joined them, adding their reassuring purrs. The group was whole again, and with that sense of unity restored, a spark of optimism rekindled in each of their hearts. The next few weeks were marked by slow but steady improvement in every aspect of their lives. Crispin's paw healed enough for him to walk without limping. Storm took on hunting duties with fierce determination, bringing back a wealth of mice and the occasional vole. Ebony helped the barn cats keep watch for predators in the fields. Willow, with her gentle nature, cared for orphaned kittens she discovered living behind the farm's grain silo. Aurora found herself regularly recalling Sage's words about the importance of hope. In time, the human family who owned the farm noticed the presence of these extra feline residents. Rather than chasing them away, they welcomed the added benefit of having more cats around to keep the rodent population in check. The barn cats and their new friends coexisted peacefully, establishing a shared territory that felt secure for the first time in months. Nevertheless, the memory of tragedy still hovered like a faint specter. Some nights, Aurora awoke to the sound of howling wind, convinced another storm would strike, or that some unforeseen disaster would befall them. On rare evenings, Crispin would break out in a feverish sweat, haunted by nightmares of drowning in that well or being swept away by the broken bridge. Storm, despite his tough exterior, sometimes sat alone in the moonlight, anxiously scanning the horizon as if waiting for an unseen threat. And yet, each time these fears resurfaced, the close bonds they had forged served as an anchor. They comforted one another, using shared purrs and gentle nuzzles to ward off the darkest thoughts. Their resilience, born from countless trials, was now woven into the very fabric of their identities. One crisp morning, as the first frost glimmered on the barn's roof, Aurora climbed a stack of bales to survey the land. The rising sun painted the fields in shimmering gold, revealing a scene of calm prosperity, well-tended farmland, a bustling yard where chickens scurried about, and a patch of pumpkins turning orange in the chilly autumn air. She breathed in deeply, the scent of cold dew mixing with the comforting aroma of hay. In that moment, she felt an intense peace. The nightmares of the storm, the heartbreak of losing their home, the painful trials of their journey, all still lived within her, but they no longer defined her. Instead, she realized that these hardships had led them to a place of safety and community. Standing there, she understood the lesson that tragedy so often teaches, that even in the face of devastation, hope can prevail when hearts remain bound by love and loyalty. As if sensing her thoughts, Storm joined her on the top of the hay bales. He glanced around the farm, his broad shoulders relaxing. "I think we've found our home, Aurora," he murmured, his voice low and steady. She nodded, pressing her forehead to his. Indeed, this was not the life they had known before, but it was a life they had forged through sheer determination, a life they had fought for, tooth and claw. Behind them, Ebony, Crispin, and Willow emerged from the barn, basking in the early sunlight. Crispin no longer looked frail, there was a renewed spark in his amber eyes. Ebony's sleek coat shone like polished onyx, and Willow, her pale fur bright in the morning light, gently guided a small kitten who had followed her from the silo. Warm smiles and contented purrs passed between them, a silent celebration of everything they had overcome. And so, dear viewers, our unique story of cats, drama, and tragedy draws closer to its happy ending, an ending well deserved after so many trials. For these feline adventurers, hope sprang not from the absence of adversity, but from their unwavering determination to face it together. They had survived the storm that destroyed their coastal village, navigated treacherous terrain, overcome illness and injury, and discovered the healing power of friendship. In the quiet hush of dawn, the barnyard stirred with the promise of a new day. The once lost travelers had found more than just a safe place to sleep, they had found a home where they could truly live, free from fear, surrounded by love. Among the hay bales and dusty beams, whispers of contentment and purrs of gratitude filled the air. To some, this might sound like a simple tale. But make no mistake, it is a gripping plot, a thrilling storyline of perseverance in the face of danger, heartbreak tempered by compassion, and ultimate redemption achieved through unity. This clan of survivors had proven that even when tragedy strikes with merciless force, when hope seems distant and hearts are heavy with sorrow, there is always a path forward if one believes in the enduring power of love. Through every brush with disaster, every setback, and every near-catastrophic moment, these courageous cats discovered that drama can forge bonds stronger than steel, and tragedy can uncover wells of resilience deeper than any fear. In the end, they stand as a testament to the unbreakable spirit that lies within all who dare to hope. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine them now, Aurora, her gentle eyes shining with calm determination, Storm, a silent sentinel standing guard over those he loves, Ebony, wise and steadfast in her devotion, Crispin, bold once more, humbled yet unbroken, and Willow, tender and compassionate, a mother figure to those who need care. Together, they greet each sunrise in the barnyard with quiet gratitude, hearts brimming with the knowledge that they have truly found their way home. And so we conclude this long odyssey of cat adventures, which started with howling winds and crashing waves but ends with the gentle rustle of barnyard hay and the soft hum of contented purrs. May their story remind us that tragedy need not spell the end, that drama can lead to unforeseen discoveries, and that, in the face of overwhelming darkness, a glimmer of hope can guide us toward a happy ending. Thank you for joining us, dear viewers, on this journey. We hope you felt each pang of desperation, each surge of triumph, and each tender moment of reconciliation alongside our brave feline companions. This is a unique story that speaks not only of survival but also of the quiet, powerful resilience of the feline spirit, and, indeed, of us all. No matter how dire the circumstances, no matter how bleak the horizon, always remember, hope lingers in every sunrise, love thrives in every soft purr, and sometimes, when you least expect it, a happy ending emerges from the most tragic beginning. May this tale forever echo in your hearts and remind you of the boundless potential for courage, friendship, and renewal, lessons from a band of determined cats who dared to believe in a new dawn. Their footprints remain, silent but profound, etched into the path of perseverance and guiding us toward a future where every challenge can be overcome through faith in one another. And that, dear friends, is the story of Aurora, Storm, Ebony, Crispin, Willow, and the barn cats who welcomed them with open hearts. A story that will forever stand as a beacon of hope, a testament that even when life twists into drama and descends into tragedy, loyalty and love can guide us to the light. Thank you for watching, and remember, our destinies may be shaped by the storms we weather, but it is the bonds we form along the way that define who we truly are.